Well, welcome to Old Classic Car Now. Today it's a bit of a tinkering day because yesterday we were out in the old Dodge pickup here. This one's been introduced already onto the channel. And we popped over to see my folks, and Harley did his video on Grandad's MGB. If you've not seen that yet, please go over to the Car Traction channel and check that out. But on the way back, there started like a flapping, clapping sort of noise from somewhere down in this corner, so I pulled over a couple of times just to make sure nothing was falling off. Had a quick peek under there because it seemed to be speed related, not engine related, as if you were driving along and you knocked it out of gear to drop the revs right down, the sound continued the same. And then after a little while I noticed that the speedometer needle, which is just in there, was flapping all around the place. It was doing 40, 50, back down to 20 and all these sort of things. So instantly it showed that that's what the problem was, something to do with the speedometer and or the drive to it. So today, as it's such a lovely day, I decided to have a bit of a poke. Now the cable is a mechanical cable that comes from the back of the speedometer and it goes down the bulkhead. I've got it just here actually, I've disconnected it so you can see it there. So that goes into the back of the speedometer. It's a square section inside the cable there. So you've got the outer surround, and then spinning away inside is that. And that goes down the firewall, through the floor. You can just see down there next to the accelerator pedal. That goes down through there, and it connects into the gearbox underneath. So I whizzed that off. And it was a little bit tight, so I cleaned all that up and it seemed nice and free, so I put all that back together, but it still made a noise when we went down the road. So the next thing I did is, while I was still out and about, I disconnected the top of the speedo cable from the speedo itself, just to see if that stopped the noise, and it did. So that told me that it wasn't a problem at the gearbox end, and it wasn't a problem in the cable, so there must be something amiss inside the speedometer itself. Now obviously this truck hasn't seen a great deal of use, so when you start using these things a bit more regularly, that's when these little gremlins start making themselves apparent. So I thought, well, the cable seems okay, it's not bound up, it's not stripped or snapped or anything like that, so it can only be something in here. So I thought today I will whiz this off and have a look and just see if there's anything odd inside. Now I do have some spares, some Dodge spares that I accumulated many years ago when we were doing big Dodge, so I'm going to have a route through and just see, because I'm sure we've got some bits of old gauges in there somewhere. So let's go and have a quick shufty in the garage before we take this out. Now the Dodge bits are in boxes along here, so I'm going to have a route through and just see what parts I still have. I know there are some bits of old gauges, like I say, and the gauge cluster on the big Dodge is 1940, is the same as this pickup, which is 1947, so maybe there's just something that can be pressed into service, or at least I can compare the speedo that's in the truck with that, just to see if there's anything obviously wrong. So I'm just going to have a quick route through here and see which box we're talking about, because I'm not quite sure. I might have to move the Anglia, I'm not quite sure, but hopefully I can squeeze in down here, slide in down there and just see if I can find a box without hopefully having to move the Ford, because that would be annoying. These here are the original old sign written panels from big Dodge that used to say not when, the other part of it's around somewhere, so at some point I'm going to clean and de-rust those a little bit and put those up on the garage wall, but I've been saying that for 10 years, so don't expect anything too soon. But yeah, anyway, let's not get distracted, let's go and find those gauges. Right, so I found a box and I didn't have to move the Anglia, so that's good news. Now, there's all sorts of gauge spares here, and again, this really just reinforces the point that if you're going to stick with a car for any length of time, accumulate spare parts, because it's so handy to have these bits to fall back on, like here. They've got various gauges, these are some of the clusters. That's a fuel gauge and ammeter combined. That's the heat and the oil pressure. So even though they look a bit ratty, they're always good donors. You know, even in here there's a smashed one. That was one of the ones that was in big Dodge when I found it all those years ago, although I think someone had actually swapped them out. But anyway, even so, that's still usable. You've still got the surround, you've still got the mechanisms inside, so again, one day that could just come in handy for something. Here we've got, still in its Mopar box, a set of lenses. So a set of these lenses, because the actual writing isn't on the face of the gauge. Not that this is relevant to the video, but the lettering, the legends and so on, are actually printed onto the glass itself, which is quite neat. So that's that. But here I've just removed the tape off it. Actually, it was all taped together. It's been mutilated a little bit, the remains of an original speedometer. So what I think I'll do, I'm going to take out the speedo that's in the truck. I'll put that somewhere safe. So I'm going to take out the speedo that's in the truck, finish getting that out, and then take this one to pieces so I can figure out how it works, how easily it comes apart. I mean, this is designed in the 1930s, so I'm fairly confident that it will come to pieces reasonably well. There's 2 screws on the back there, I'm not sure if you can see those. There's 2 screws there, a couple of screws on the face. So I'm hoping that this will come apart and it'll be fairly self-evident. I've never had one of these apart before, so I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. But the way I see it is the speedo doesn't work properly on the truck at the moment, so I can't make it much worse. Yeah, let's go and have a look. But first off, like I say, I need to just go and finish taking off the one that's on the truck. Well, it's a cracking day for it. I can't believe we're still in January, only just, but we are still in January. So there are a couple of studs that stick out that are welded to the back of the dashboard itself, and the frame around the speedometer has a couple of holes in, and they're just little nuts on the back here, so they were quite tricky to get at. They are 3/8 if you're going to try and do this job on your Dodge truck. I made a start on freeing them up. Fortunately I found a socket because there isn't really room. I did try using a trusty spanner in this case. I'm not quite sure what make that is. It's made in Germany. But yeah, I tried that, but there just isn't room to swing that around, so that's when you need to have a little socket set. And this one is really handy because it gets in really tight spaces, so you can get that in behind the gauge itself to get it all off. So I'm just going to grovel around under here because you have to sort of go in upside down and get your head down in the pedal, so I can't really go filming that. So I'll come back once I've actually got the gauge itself out. Okay, those are the 2 nuts that held it on over there, and there's the speedo itself. Golden rule is if you're working upside down, facing up underneath the dashboard like I was with this, keep your mouth shut, because if you're undoing those little nuts, you could easily drop down and you end up swallowing them. So always keep your mouth shut when you're working upside down and facing upwards. Right, let's go and get this on the bench and then go and take that other one apart and just figure out how exactly these speedometers work. Now I've got a feeling that some of these spare gauges I bought off eBay years ago, and some of them were sent over by a friend of mine who's in the States, so thanks to him for sending them over. This speedo here, the parts donor speedo, I think possibly came from him as well, because he had a half-ton truck that had been hot-rodded. This was years and years ago, so he did send me over a pile of spares, some of those gauges that we saw before, those clusters, and I think this sort of part complete speedo. So I think the first thing to do is we'll just carefully pull this one apart and have a look, just see how exactly it works, and then we'll compare it. If I carefully take this one apart, I think the outer rim is just crimped on, and then it's like a bayonet fitting, I think, so I'll have to be very careful with that. But yeah, let's take this one apart first, and then we can suss out exactly how these things go together. Let's have a look. So someone's already had a go at this one. You probably can't really see, but this would have been crimped around the body of the speedometer, i.e. this, because there's a lip on the edge of here, so I think that would have, there's a little tab somewhere there, and that would have sort of fitted there, and the face would have gone on. So anyway, we'll put that to one side for now. Now this is all there is inside this. Can we see that? Right, so that's all there is. Now there's 2 screws on the back here, so I think the thing we'll do is we'll whiz those out and have a look at the mechanism itself and just see how complicated this is. Right, screwdriver to hand, so let's give this a go. They're stainless steel, so I wasn't expecting them to be rusty. I've been joined by my youthful assistant here. Hello.
Hello.
So you might actually learn something.
Subscribe to Car Traction.
Probably learn not to mess around with old cars. That'll probably be the greatest lesson of all, but a bit late for that. So right, so that's loosening that off nicely, so I'll just support that underneath so it doesn't drop out, because that would be not good. Like I say, these things were all designed in the 1930s, so they're designed, there we go, right, so we'll pop that to one side. These were designed to be fixable, so that Let me just make sure you can see that. That's the mechanism inside the back of the Dodge's Speedo. You can see the mileometer there. So these would obviously turn around as you cover the distance. And in there, which you probably can't see, there's a square section because, like I said, the inner cable that goes in there that feeds down to the gearbox from the drive at the gearbox end, that goes in there, and being a square, it drives the mechanism inside here.
Could change the mileage there from that, couldn't you?
Oh yeah, you can. Yes. Oh yeah, well, that's what people used to do. They used to just take these apart, fiddle the numbers, and then suddenly take off, 20, 30, 40,000 mile off the car. But clocking is frowned upon. So, right. So that appears somewhere. I've got a little screwdriver here. So that, I'm just going to see if it's actually free. Now that turns. You can see the needle obviously goes in the centre of there, and you turn it. It's only if you flick it and get it up to speed does the needle turn slightly, but I think we need to take this face off and just be able to see things a little bit better. There's only a couple of little screws there, so hopefully they won't put up too much of a fight. I'll just give that a go. Quite small, a bit fiddly. There we go. So we really don't want to drop those. Right, let's get this other one out as well. Let's see how we're doing. Oops, it's quite shallow. Right, there we are. Let's just get that out of there. Like I say, we don't want to drop those because they're very, very small. And if I drop it in my immaculate workshop, I'll never see them again. So that's that. Right. So there we go. So you've just got various cogs and wheels and gears and things in there. So don't want to lose that washer. So really, I think that probably works okay because you flick this, and I don't know if you can pick that up, but you can see you flick this, but this in here is separate. And that flicks around and operates the needle for when you're driving along. So just by turning that, it doesn't turn the inner wheel very much, but if you flick it, it flicks the gauge over, the needle over. So that seems to work okay, I think. Don't know if you can see that really, but that's the theory anyway. So I think the trick to do now will be to take the original truck one apart. We'll just take the mechanism out of that because it doesn't look too hard to get at, and then just see if that looks the same or operates the same as this one. And it may be that we can try making one speedometer out of the two and just go from there and then try it on the truck and see how we go. That's the theory anyway. That's the back of the Speedo we've just taken off the truck. Now this outer thing has been crimped on. I'm not sure if that's how it was done originally. It probably was, or whether it was like a bayonet, but I don't think it was like a bayonet fixing actually. I did before. But these look like they've just been crimped over slightly, so I think we will have to uncrimp those gently in order to get that off. And that will release the lens, which we'll be very, very careful with, and then we can start working our way through as we did with the other gauge over there. But yeah, organisation is the name of the game, I think. So I'll just stop recording and then I'll just gently get this off and I'll come back once I've done that. Just decrimping this outer rim, and someone has actually already marked top, if you can see that, top and here, so I know how to put it back together. So I think someone's been in here before, so maybe there's been a problem with this speedometer before. So I don't think I'm the first person to go in here, but at least that's quite handy because that tells me the correct orientation to put this back together, so that when you put it back in the truck and line these up with the studs on the back of the dashboard, it means it won't be sort of looking like that when you put it in, which wouldn't look very good. But yeah, like I say, when I was driving along, the needle was all over the place, and I thought it may be the cable, but like I say, once I disconnected it from this end, the cable, the noise went away, which makes me think possibly there's something awry in here. The cable itself looked fine, it wasn't binding, you could turn it freely within the outer housing, so I think there's something going on here, but I'm not quite sure what. Okay, that's the outer rim off safely. That's all good. There we go. Right, there's the lens, the very delicate lens. Like I said before, the lettering, the numbers rather, are actually on the lens itself, which is probably maybe an American thing of the 1930s, I'm not quite sure, but we'll put that safely out of the way. Now these usually fall off. If anyone sees an old Dodge pickup truck or a big truck, more often than not these little things here with the pointer on fall off and they drop down inside. But to get this comes off, right, let's put that under there. So this thing with the pointer on has to come off. Now I'm not sure if these are glued on or if it lifts off. I rather hope it comes off. It's sort of loose, but you don't really want to force it, but you can't take the face off without taking this off. But I think what we'll do, we'll take these two screws out and just have a bit of a closer look that way before we commit to seeing if we can actually get this off, because we may not need to take that off at all. Right, well, looking at this, the mechanism is actually slightly different, as is often the way. This is the spare speedo, and this is connected to where the cable goes in, and the inner wheel there is what's connected to where the needle goes on the end of this little spike here. So that's how that one is. But if I have a look at this one, the mechanisms are slightly different. The theory is the same, but the mechanisms are slightly different. This one's also got a bit of a shoulder on there, which this one doesn't. So there are some little changes, some little differences. So I think all I can do is really just make sure that this one off the truck is all freed up and good to go, because on the face of it, it doesn't look too bad to my untrained eye. So yeah, I'd like to try and avoid taking the needle off if I can, because for all I know it could actually be glued on slightly. I'm not quite sure, so I'm a little bit reluctant to disturb that, but I'll have another look and just see whether it can just be freed up. It does seem to bind a little bit. If I just put this one down, have a look at this one. This that rotates around, that it does seem to bind a little bit sometimes. And I think it should be a bit freer than that.
Is that the noise we heard, the binding?
It could be, because it's like a random sort of noise that we were getting, wasn't it, when we were driving along?
And it sped up when
yeah.
we sped
I
up.
think it goes that way. And you spin it around. But every now and again, it tightens up.
Well, that caused the inner bit to spin around faster, which would explain
it might bind up.
Why it suddenly went like
what
to
happens
80.
is if this won't spin, but the cable is still connected to the gearbox drive at the bottom, the cable will start binding up, and I think that's the noise we were getting, because sometimes this sticks. So that's stuck now. You get to there and it sticks. It'll go around, but it's not very free, and I think that would be enough to nobble the drive cable. So I think I'll just try lubricating that gently with some very light oil, because you don't want too much oil because it attracts dirt and dust and everything, which then clogs everything up and causes its own problems. But it just feels a bit stickier than I suspect it should do, because if I go back to this one, which operates in a similar principle, that doesn't bind at all. That just keeps going and going and going. But this one definitely has a sticky patch there, and if the cable, because there's no torque to the cable, it's not really going to be able to turn anything down around with any great resistance. So if it gets to there, it's going to struggle, I think. So I think we'll just see if we can carefully free this up, just to try and improve that. Well, we've been exercising it for a little while and just putting a little bit of light oil here and there. There is still a little bit of resistance, but it does seem smoother, whereas before there was more of like a stiction when you got to a certain point. Now it seems fairly consistent. There's still a little bit. So I think we'll just carry on exercising it a little bit more, and then I'm just going to put it back together and try it on the truck. At least I don't have to install it fully into the dashboard. I can just probably strap it to the steering column just for testing purposes. Then once I know that the speedo's right, whether after doing this or any future work that it might need, but at least I don't have to grovel around putting it back fully into the dashboard before I can test it. I can just have it hanging below the dash in order to see if it works correctly or not. So I think the thing to do is we'll just carry on just easing this a little bit more, keep going at it a little bit and just see what's going on, and then piece it back together carefully and give it a whirl. Right, what we can try and do is pop this into the vise, just gently put that into there. And I've dug out an old drill, quite a small hand drill. I'm just going to see if that operates the speedometer needle which is there. So it goes anti-clockwise. It's not the best drill in the world, but I haven't got an electric drill that runs backwards, so let's try and get this as square on as we can.
Yeah, it does read, but we're just going so
Yeah, it does read, yeah.
5 miles. There you go, that's better. No, it's about 15, I'd say. Yeah, that was nice and smooth.
It's just not a great drive arrangement, but
might be the drill, remember, that's a bit sort of
on this falling out, you see.
jerky.
You know, the gears on the drill aren't great.
Yeah, that's going nice.
The gears are pretty old.
Yeah, that's working.
It's not waving around all over the place. So if I had an electric drill that had variable speed and reverse drive, then we could do it on that. But this proves the concept. Right, that's finally found a use for this trusty old drill that's been hanging up in the garage for ages. But that kind of proves the concept that it's there or thereabouts. So I think we're going to put this back together and then we'll just try it on the truck when we can. Right folks, that's all back together now. Right, well, a bit of fiddling and faffing later, that's now back in. I did actually put it straight back in because I figured, well, if it doesn't work, I can just disconnect the speedo cable from the back of here until I find another gauge that I know works. But this one, we've carefully lubed it and sort of make sure it's sort of quite free. So I think the next thing to do is take it down the road and just see if there's any improvement or not. Well, we're just going for another quick test drive. The speedo appears to be behaving. It wobbles around a little bit, but you expect a bit of that. But we are doing about 25-30 miles an hour. But before it was waving all over the place. So we'll just carry on for a bit further, but fingers crossed it's going to behave. Turn round here, I think. Mind the bins. Well, we've had a quick test drive out in the oldie dodgy, and it appears to be working. So clearly the problem was something just binding up a little bit in the speedo head here itself rather than the cable, because I still wasn't 100% convinced that the cable wasn't at fault. So it seems to be working now, so I think obviously we'll just keep an eye on it and see how we go, and if it does it again, well, I'll probably have to whiz it out again. But there's only 2 nuts hold this on, so while it's a bit of a fiddle working upside down underneath the dashboard, at least it's not impossible, it doesn't take too long. I'll probably keep an eye out in case I see another complete speedo assembly for sale somewhere, because I won't mind getting a spare one in stock, plus I could use it in Big Dodge. So I don't think the speedo actually works in Big Dodge properly either, so I'll probably have a look at that sometime as well. But anyway, at least that's working again, so that's good news. Well, we had to give this a quick spin. We had it outside anyway because we were faffing around with the Dodge before, so it'd be rude not to take this for a little airing. So again, just get a nice cycle of heat through everything, and we took it up the road, gave it a blast at sort of 40, 45, exercise the brakes and so on. So that was all really good. I'm really looking forward to having this and the Dodge out this year, because it'll be interesting to see what they're like, because we've bought them both over the winter, so neither have really seen much use at all. So we're really looking forward to getting them out and about at some of the shows. Some of the dates have been published now, so we're going to have to start thinking about booking in for a few of these shows. Right, so over here, little Dodge is tucked away. Harley did an excellent job again, reversing it in.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Well, it did a really good job. It takes it very slow and steady. Slow and steady wins the race. And I'm really pleased that the speedo seems to be working again. Hopefully it'll carry on working, but if it goes again, at least we'll know what to look at. So what other jobs do I want to do on the Dodge? Well, the fan belt is starting just to look a little bit second hand, so I think the next job I'm going to do is whiz this off. It's quite dry and a bit, I don't think that's going to last very long at all. It feels really, it's really sort of crusty, so I think we'll be changing that before too long. So I'll take that off and then get my box of fan belts out and just see if I can find something that'll fit. I don't think it needs an oil change, but I may just give it an oil change just for peace of mind, because I know it's had an oil change within living memory and it hasn't done a huge mileage, but it's done lots of little short runs, so it's probably time to drop the oil out and put some fresh in. So for the cost of a couple of tins of oil or whatever it takes, I don't quite know what the capacity is, it may as well be done, because it's such a sweet running engine this, and I certainly want to keep it that way. I want to keep this engine sounding as good as it does now. Like I say, it was reconditioned at some point. There is a plate, if we have a look down there, you can see a plate just down there. It says Dura-Built Engine Company, such and such, Los Angeles, California. So it's had a reconditioned engine at some point, God knows when, and I think it's actually a Plymouth car engine, this one. Now, with all the excitement, with the arrival of the Dodge and the Renault over the end there, you might be thinking the old Anglia has been a bit ignored, a bit neglected, but no, that couldn't be further from the truth. But I was very remiss, because last year, 2022, I forgot to mention that was the year this car celebrated its 70th birthday. 70 years this car has been in existence, many more than I have. Original paint, super original car, original interior, and it's just a real little Bobby Dazzler. And it wouldn't be right not to at least mention that it's made it to its 70th, or now 71st year of life. And to celebrate that, I bought it a little present. Because over here, we have a proper Enfo Bakelite fuel filler cap. Now, I know things don't get much more exciting than this, so I probably should have asked you to sit down first, but that was advertised on a certain internet auction site as a genuine Enfo fuel filler cap for a Pop or an Anglia or any of the little Fords. So before I'm going to put that on, I'm just going to give it a quick clean up, and to do that I'm going to use this wonderful old polish, because this dates to 1952, just like the car. I did explain this in an earlier video, but just to quickly summarise, a friend of mine took me to a scrapyard that he was very fond of, and we went rooting around in the back of an old van that was still there in the corner, an old delivery van, and in there were boxes and boxes of old motor products, including several tins of this wonderful old polish, and there was a delivery note in there dated 1952, so that's how I know that this polish is the same age, 71, as the little Ford Anglia here. So I'm going to use a special treat. I'm going to use a bit of this 1952 polish on this original Bakelite Enfo filler cap, and then that will be going over there. I know this is just too exciting for words really, but right, let's get this polish sorted out. Now, I wasn't able to find a 1952 rag, sadly. I did try, but we're as close as we're going to get. So I just thought I'd give this a quick bulling up with this ancient wax, quick wax, for polishing cellulose, lacquers, enamel, protects and preserves all finishes. What a cracking tin that is. That'll be going on the shelf when I've finished this, but it's really good polish actually, so just put some on there. So we'll give that a quick polishing up. Got a trusty yellow rag here. There we go. Better late than never. But yeah, how wonderful does that look? That'll look just fantastic on the ancient Ford. Right, let's go and fit it, because the fuel filler cap that's on there at the moment, it's like a 60s sort of locking cap, something like that, but it doesn't really look in keeping with the old Anglia, and I can't see anyone siphoning the fuel out of it anytime soon. So I think this will look altogether better. It's like a very dark black. It's not quite brown, it's more of a black. But yeah, doesn't that just look great? Apologies for the shadows, but yeah, as you can see, it's just a fairly pickly old chrome locking filler cap that's on here, and that doesn't really look in keeping at all. So I think we'll whiz that off. I think that's the key. Nice old Anglia keyring, thanks David. Right, so let's get that in there. We'll whiz that off. That can go in the box of spare caps, because you never know when you might need one. And here we have the lovely old Bakelite cap. Let's see if we can get this on. Needs a bit of a push. There we go. Oh, doesn't that look fantastic? I think that looks heaps better. Now it shows up the state of the original paint on the filler neck itself. But yeah, I think that just complements the original old Ace number plates a treat. Let me know in the comments if you agree or don't. I will take the Anglia out for a spin sometime. It hasn't been out for a little while, but I do warm it up from time to time. But at the moment it's blocked in behind the other two, so it's a little bit awkward to take it out. But don't worry, it will be coming out fairly soon. Let me know in the comments also which of these you would like to see more often on the channel. Do you look forward in particular to seeing the Anglia, Dodge, the 4CV at the back there, or indeed none of them? Because, like I say, your feedback's always really welcome. The little Morris is just tucked away in the corner there. I can't really get involved in that because I really need to spend some time on this. But yeah, let me know in the comments. Of course, maybe it's the little standard out there that you're a big fan of. Maybe you don't like foreign vehicles. Not everyone likes Dodges and all these sort of foreign things, and Renault, and you'd rather see content just about the British stuff. So yeah, always interested to hear your thoughts on these things. Anyway, that was an enjoyable couple of hours spent tinkering outside here, taking the Speedo apart. I learnt something there, so that's always good. So at least if there's a problem again, I won't feel daunted by taking the thing apart again. And that's the beauty of these old cars and trucks. I mean, this was designed, these first came out in 1939 and were built through to 47, which is the year of this truck. But everything was designed to be taken apart, fixed, repaired. If something goes wrong, you can just replace an individual little component, and that's the beauty of vehicles of this age. They're meant to be worked on. Everything is mechanical, and it was put together by a human, so it can be fixed by a human. And these things are, I mean, these were repaired by farmers and people, blacksmiths, and just people who operated them day in, day out, and they were designed to be fixed at the side of the road if there was ever a problem. And that's the beauty of them now. And as long as you can find the parts for them, and these smaller Dodges, you can find the bits for them. So and there's no reason why they just can't keep running forever. Legislation allowing, of course, because you never quite know what's going to happen on that score. But for the time being, as far as we know, with what we know, this should, in theory, be able to run for the foreseeable future. And hopefully we'll have many, many good outings with it this year, because it's January now. We're going to start booking in for a few shows, and I'm really looking forward to just having it out and about. And it's going to be so practical as well, with that big load bay in the back. So I can probably start thinking of buying an old motorbike or two and put it in the back. That would be fun. Be nice to have an old Indian in the back, wouldn't it? But I don't think that'll happen.
Sell
But
a big Dodge and buy an Indian.
sell a big Dodge and buy an Indian motorbike. Yeah, maybe. Or maybe not.
Anyway.
That's probably the only way we could do it, yeah. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little update on the Dodge and this speedometer repair episode. And there'll be more videos along very, very soon. So bye for now and thanks for watching. Of course, I've just remembered I need to put this one back together. Dope.